Hello and welcome to the Weekend Sauce. My name's Corey.
And I'm Don.
So this time we're going to be looking at episode 4 of Game of Thrones final season, season 8, the last of the Starks. We're a bit late. We are recording this a few weeks after, but we still had some thoughts.
Had time to mull it over.
Yeah, I'd had some time to sort of
Mull it over.
settle in and calm down. So yeah, we just really wanted to talk about kind of some general thoughts on stuff we liked or didn't like for the episode. But really just kind of briefly summarizing the episode in case you haven't been able to watch it or just,
Spoilers,
yeah,
right?
spoilers, of course, but really just kind of a refresher on what happened in the episode. So this is the episode that followed the Battle of Winterfell, of course, kind of taking account of everything that follows the Night King's untimely demise. So the episode starts with the big funeral pyres that they have for everybody, Jorah, Dolorous Edd, etc. Um, Kind of just went through that real quick, and then
See all the non-factors, bodies, except for maybe Jorah, but
yeah, like the death count is high, but really it's not anybody who matters more or less, except yeah, maybe for Jorah. Then yeah, there's the whole sort of celebration that they have at Winterfell with everybody obviously drinking and dancing and yada yada. Um, so they go through the celebration. Key highlights from that we've got Daenerys obviously feeling kind of alienated in comparison to Jon, because everybody loves Jon, right? There's that scene where Tormund's talking
right,
about.
but I don't know. I just feel it's such a mute complaint because she's coming to his home.
Yeah,
So of course people are going to like him
yeah.
better than her.
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess it's the for her, like, in her mind she's the rightful ruler and she's going to be doing really great things for Westeros, but I mean for all these Northmen and then the wildlings and everybody, they don't know her, right? It's like you're just some random lady who, I mean, granted she has like this gigantic army and some killer dragons and stuff, but like beyond that they don't really know anything about her or like what she would be doing for Westeros. I mean, especially if you're a wildling, you probably wouldn't really care, right? So yeah, I mean, like, you're definitely right. Nevertheless, I mean, obviously she can't help but feel a bit alienated.
I mean, it
Um,
makes sense when they're saying, "Oh, who rides a dragon?"
yeah.
Tormund, he's going in. Like, I get it. It's okay. There's
hmm
also that scene with Gendry, right,
Yeah, well,
where
I
he's
was gonna
got
say next, there's she brings up Gendry, and like I thought she was gonna start grilling him for
it's
being,
pop pop.
yeah, for being the son of Bobby B, and I was like, initially I was like, man, come on, like leave him alone, you know what I mean? He
Yeah.
just got off that boat ride, like, come on. But yeah, so she like recognizes him as, like, legitimizes him in his family tree. You know what I mean? Because he was a bastard, but then she makes him an actual Baratheon, right? And makes him Lord of Storm's End, I believe it was.
That's right.
And then he immediately runs off and proposes to Arya, which was kind of weird. I know it's like the setting that they're in, like that's not like a totally crazy thing to do, but it's still just kind of cringy. You know what I mean? It's like they hooked up and like yeah they have a connection, but then immediately he's like, be my wife,
What you mean, Corey? You don't want
Yeah.
Arya as your wife?
It
Come
was it
on,
was
man.
it was very weird. She declines obviously because she says like I'm not a
True
lady.
to her character.
Yeah, true to what kind of how she's been since the very start. I'm not a lady. I don't want to be just some lady in a castle. You know what I mean? Um, so that's fair. They keep going through the celebration. Got some scenes with Sandor and Sansa, which was a bit weird. They were basically talking about how, like, all the bad stuff that ended up happening to her when she didn't go with Sandor to, like, out of King's Landing. And he was saying, like, if you came with me, none of that would have happened. Like, you would have been a lot better. And she's like, well, no, actually, I am better because of all the stuff that happened, which um, it was a bit awkward because and I especially saw this online, kind of following the episode, because obviously Sansa's gone through a whole lot in and involving sort of sexual assault and rape and seeing all these terrible things and stuff. um, I would say that they didn't intend to imply that she's sort of um, like thriving because of all that stuff, but it
No,
did.
she's not thriving, but I think it made her smarter, right?
Yeah, it's just it
Indirectly.
yeah, it was a bit weird, you know what I mean? Like they probably could have adjusted the wording or changed some things, I think. I can understand why people would attribute what she said as her basically saying that she's a lot stronger because of all this, the rape and the stuff like that. again, I don't think that's what they intended, but unfortunately, that's just kind of the reality of how they put it out. So that's not great. Um,
Oh
be,
yeah, this was the episode with the nice cup. It wasn't
it
Starbucks,
was a
but it
Starbucks. Yeah,
was
the
it Starbucks?
I believe it was Starbucks. Yeah, they just left it in for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I don't know. So yeah, I mean, like that was a bit awkward. Still, Sandor, kind of, at least in my opinion, showing why he's a really, uh, I would say, great character. Maybe not a great person, but I mean, he's got all these random ladies that are like approaching him and stuff, and the guy just wants to be left alone. You know what I mean? Which obviously is kind of mean spirit on his end, but it just really shows like how kind of screwed up he is. I mean, he doesn't care about anything except his revenge against his brother. So I really think it showcased it fairly well. Got some bonding stuff with Jaime, Tyrion, and Brienne, which ultimately leads to Jaime and Brienne hooking up. That's a bit later.
Fan service, let's go.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I mean, I've always really liked Brienne as a character, so I was glad to see her kind of having some happiness being in her life. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I
Um,
agree.
I was glad that again, like I said, that she at least at the time was having some happy stuff happening to her. That changes a bit later, which we'll get into as we keep going on. Also, kind of, I believe it's before, but you have that scene with Tyrion and Jaime, and then Bronn shows up and basically threatens to kill them. But Tyrion kind of negotiates
That's right.
to give Bronn Highgarden, which he says okay, and then he basically kind of just screws off and says, make sure that you survive. I don't know if they're gonna bring him back or not. I think it'd be kind of weird if they didn't, but I mean, at this point, there really isn't
I
any reason to
wouldn't
bring him
I
back.
wouldn't blame them.
Yeah, I don't know. It was kind of a weird scene, you know what I mean? Like I don't
I
know.
mean, it's a loose end, but it's not the biggest loose end.
Yeah,
So
for
I guess
sure.
I could. No, I'm not gonna say I forgive it because I can't forgive this show anymore.
Yeah.
But
Then we go through some stuff just about attacking King's Landing, where Daenerys is obviously more aggressively focused, and basically everybody else in the kind of council says to be a bit more merciful. Um, she says, kind of we'll see. John ends up revealing his true.
oh, before you get to that part, I
Yeah,
just wanted to touch upon when they're talking about the troops and apparently half the Dothraki are still alive.
yeah. Apparently,
Yeah,
yeah, it just come out of
where
nowhere.
did this half come
Yeah,
from? And then after Sansa finally brings up a reasonable point, shouldn't we let our men rest after the battle?
yeah,
No,
yeah. I really
we're
like that too.
going
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, it was very strange. Like I know, obviously with Daenerys, they're trying to like.
But I guess it's like a hinting, right? It's kind
Yeah,
of
they're trying to portray her in a certain light, which I can understand. Um, I think it would have worked a lot better if they did more episodes instead of just kind of dropping it super quickly. But
gotta make that Star Wars money,
yeah, I
baby.
don't know. It's very weird. Then yeah, John ends up telling Sansa and Arya about his Targaryen heritage and tells them not to tell anybody. Sansa immediately tells Tyrion, kind of almost right after, and then Tyrion kind of ends up telling Varys about it. Varys, I mean, you have to assume he already knows.
He
Um,
didn't, but he knows now.
yeah, um, it's a bit later in the episode, but there's that really great scene with Tyrion and
Tyrion and
Varys,
Varys,
kind of
yeah.
discussing the nuances of having Jon or Daenerys as ruler, right? Because you know, up to this point, Daenerys has been pretty good as a ruler, but I mean, obviously, she's a woman from a foreign land, right? Nobody knows her. No, like I mean, it's kind of like we were saying, like she just shows up with her army and her dragons, which is very impressive and intimidating, everything. But again,
She's lost her compassion.
yeah, she's slowly becoming a bit more aggressive and malicious, and I mean, it's like it's just not extremely reasonable to assume that everybody would prefer her over John. And then, conversely, John is, a really good figurehead leader who would probably do his best to,
He's led
to
wars,
do the right
he's
thing.
rallied people.
Yeah, he seems to be more of an involved leader where it's like he doesn't really care for a lot of the trappings of, nobility or royalty or anything like that. He just wants to do the best thing, and thus far that has meant that he has to take leadership roles to do the best thing, and everybody loves him. So he would be a pretty good leader. Um, Theoretically, whether or not he wants it, obviously he always says he doesn't want it. Um, so that's difficult, and they did talk about like having them rule together, but I mean obviously Daenerys doesn't seem like she wants that.
Doesn't
Um,
want that, and
yeah,
Varys even stated that she'd be too strong for him, right?
yeah,
Just
she would
overpower the
sort of
thing.
make he'd be a pushover
Which
in
makes sense
comparison
because
here.
he's already a pushover.
Yeah, and I mean like at this point too, there's Jon still very much loves Daenerys, even though it's kind of awkward with her being his aunt. Yeah, his aunt.
That's right.
Yeah, so it's a bit weird, what I mean, for him, but he still he still cares about her a lot, which is understandable. Um, Arya ends up leaving Winterfell
With
with
them.
Sandor Clegane heading towards King's Landing. The wildlings screw off back beyond the wall, and there's a very horrible scene where Jon basically says, "Take Ghost with you," and doesn't say goodbye or anything. Just says, "Take him with you. He belongs in the
Why
north."
why would you ever say goodbye to your dog of how many
Yeah, why
years?
would you ever say goodbye to your faithful companion who was like,
Not even a pet, nah, don't
yeah,
want that. Nope.
I remember, first season where there's this big deal about, these direwolves puppies being born, right? Because like direwolves are basically extinct. I think they are extinct except for those five, and then John's the only one who gets the white one, right? Because he's not a true Stark, right? He gets the white one, and now I guess he just doesn't care about his companion anymore.
The budget
Um,
didn't allow
yeah,
it.
apparently not. After that, everybody leaves towards King's Landing in two groups. There's one group with Tyrion, Daenerys, I believe Varys is there as well, but they go by ship. They set sail, and Jon leads kind of the Northern Army by foot towards King's Landing. There's that scene where um, Daenerys is flying around for whatever reason, probably scouting. Let's say scouting. That sounds good.
She's blinded by how
And
much
she
fun
gets
she's having.
blinded. She gets blindsided, or
She has
not?
early
Not
onset
she.
dementia.
Yeah, not she doesn't get blindsided, but Rhaegal gets blindsided by Euron's navy coming out of the crevasse to fire some scorpion shots at Rhaegal, killing him basically instantly. They
3 shots.
three shots, three hits, he's down, right? And again, that I mean, well, let's get into it after we finish the summary here. So, Rhaegal dies, and Daenerys is obviously upset. Um, the Greyjoy fleet ends up kind of decimating the Targaryen fleet, and everybody kind of ends up in the ocean, and they wash up a bit later. Missandei is the only one captured.
Sunday.
Missandei is the only one captured. Everybody else makes it, and they do a little sort of parlay after the fact. This is after Daenerys is convinced not to just burn all of King's Landing. There's a little parlay between the two separate armies where you have Tyrion as being the hand of the queen, talking with Qyburn, who's also hand of the queen. Um, Obviously Tyrion is still advocating for a surrender. He's trying his best to make sure that the least amount of lives are lost, whereas Qyburn just says, I mean, Cersei wants certain things, and you can surrender, but we're not. Um, Obviously, so nothing ends up happening in this parlay, and Cersei refuses to surrender. Daenerys refuses to surrender. The Mountain beheads Missandei, who is killed. Obviously, she dies. Grey Worm is obviously upset. Daenerys is obviously upset, and then we have the backdrop for the next episode, which is the kind of invasion of King's Landing. So,
All right,
um,
let's just start on the good
let's
things
unpack
for
it.
the
Yeah,
episode. I feel like just overall, as they come to mind, I feel like the acting actually was pretty strong
it was. I think it was.
overall.
Yeah, I think it was a bit better. I mentioned earlier. I really think the Hound Sandor is a really great character, and I think in part, especially, it's a lot of it has to do with the acting, right? We have Rory McCann, that's his name, Rory McCann. He does a really good job of being like, I mean, he's a big guy, obviously, so part of it is his appearance, of course, but like, he does a really good job of being this big, gruff, but ultimately mean-spirited and malicious person, right? Um, Again, probably a lot of it has to do with his physicality, but he does a really good job at kind of fitting and embodying kind of who the Hound is supposed to be, right? He's technically a knight, but he really isn't. I think we mentioned it in our last Game of Thrones
Mm.
discussion where uh, Sandor really isn't kind of a fit at all for like chivalry or anything like that. He's more of a brute. He's more of a mercenary type character, and yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with Rory's acting there. So really good. Um,
I
Everyone,
would just say like I personally don't agree with the actions that Tyrion takes, right? But the conversations that he has is amazing, right?
yeah,
You could definitely feel the emotion that he has. He's really trying to grip to terms of just trying to believe in someone actually
yeah.
for the first, well, not necessarily for the first time,
Well,
but
pretty
like,
much for the first time. Yeah, I
well, I
mean,
mean, he's tried before. He's just always been burned, right?
yeah, you know what I mean. Like it's that's a really good point actually, because like, um, I mean, you think about I mean, geez, especially if you go back to the first season with how they imagined Peter Dinklage as Tyrion Lannister, right? Like his hair is all weird and all this stuff, right? Like you have Tyrion as being, the imp, right? This like lecherous, kind of
Hmm.
gross, almost creepy character, um, which mainly comes from how people sort of see him with regards to his height, right? So obviously, in reality, he's not that bad of a person. It's just that everyone demonizes him for being a dwarf. And then now you have Tyrion Lannister, the Hand of the Queen, and chief advisor to Daenerys Targaryen, right? So like this incredible change, right, between where he started, where he ended up, and all throughout the seasons and everything like that. Yeah, it's like you said, like every time he's kind of like believed in someone or something, it's always kind of
It's
backfired on
falling
him,
through.
right? Even when it's just like personally speaking, with all um, the women that he's been involved with, right? Um, I know there was I think it's Aisha, the prostitute lady,
Oh
the
yeah, yeah.
that he was involved with. She ends up disappoint. He ends up killing her, right? Obviously,
Wasn't her name like Faye?
is it Faye? Oh, I can't. It's been so long, I can't
Yeah, it's
remember.
been a while. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been. That's like season. Geez, must be like season 4.
Yeah,
Honestly, it's been a
yeah.
while. But yeah, what I mean. Like everyone in his life has basically let him down in some way. Especially and including his family, right? I mean, he kills his dad, right? He kills Tywin. He shoots him with a crossbow. Um, Cersei has again demonized him since birth. Really, it's
Because of the
only
prophecy.
yeah, really, it's only Jamie who's tolerated him and been his friend for the most part, right? Braun, again, I mean, this guy who's, they're friendly enough, but at the end of the day, Braun's just there for his paycheck, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, but then now we have, like you said, he's trying so hard to believe in Daenerys and believe that she's going to do the right thing. Um, that isn't really, and that doesn't really end up being the case, of course, but he tries, right? And it's like you said, like maybe even the stuff that he does isn't stuff that's like super great or even agreeable, but at least Peter Dinklage
He did a
makes it
great
believable,
portrayal.
right?
Yeah.
You want to agree with him.
That's why the conversation with him and Varys was just
Yeah.
fantastic. I love how Varys is always saying that he has always served the realm, right?
Yeah.
He's always been for the people,
Hmm.
and he knows that Daenerys is going off the end on
Yeah.
this one.
He's very I would say Tyrion is very more like personable or personally related. Like he focuses more on people, right? Individuals, whereas like Varys is always just more like in sheer practicality. Like who is more practical to be ruler? Like Daenerys Targaryen, who possibly is becoming unhinged, or Jon Snow, who's like the hero of the people, right?
Another thing that was great about this episode, at least for me, is I got to see Varys, kind of have those mind games. Not just like, with Tyrion, right?
Yeah.
With that conversation. It's been so long since we've had Varys kind of engage with another character in that manner. I felt like for the longest while, it's just been him just notifying people of
Yeah.
stuff or kind of, I don't know, I didn't have that same Master of Spies effect that he
Hmm.
had in the early seasons,
Yeah.
maybe that had to do with the
No, no, I
book
definitely
writing,
agree. Yeah.
but his character just wasn't. Those were some of the best conversations. That's when I was getting the most hype between
Hmm.
him and Littlefinger, and him and
Yeah,
Tyrion
well, I
having.
was gonna say like you mentioned you hadn't seen that in a while, and I feel like a big part of that kind of left when Littlefinger died, right? Because Littlefinger was, slimy and not a great guy, but I mean he was this insane sort of, um, like again he had his hands in everything, right? I mean,
But
geez,
didn't he just die last season though? Like I don't know. I felt like there still had more room for Varys to have more Master Spies. I don't know who he would have it with, right? But I felt that's a not only interesting but an important view that we should have been able to look at, right? Like
yeah,
what's
more
going on with
like
Varys across the seas now? What is
yeah,
he doing?
more like I guess more like political intrigue stuff as opposed to like Daenerys versus Cersei kind of deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Especially in the past, that's one of the things that Game of Thrones has been more known for, right? Where it's not just like two medieval or fantasy armies like finding out who's good
Well,
or
that's the
bad.
thing. That's what's changed with this season. I realize that a lot of it is not to say that there's no like messaging, right? Or there's nothing deep about it. I feel like it's just very you take it at face value. That's what
Yeah.
you have to do.
Hmm. Well, I mean, I think part of that too comes with characters being, removed or killed off or whatever have you. Because I mean, like with, with time, obviously we end up with a smaller cast and a smaller, more important cast, right? So I mean, again, when you think for past seasons, you had the Baratheons were alive, right? Stannis Renly and for a certain amount of time Robert, right? So that was a whole family that had things involved with them. Littlefinger, of course, he's gone now. It's only been a season, but even so, um, like everything kind of in and involving the Dornish, every like there's no Dorne involvement at all anymore, right? Which is more intensive, especially in the books, right? So we're really down to only a handful of houses of families at this point. So I mean, I feel like with the loss of that more expansive kind of cast, we have a lessening in kind of like I said, political intrigue and stuff that isn't just what you said, stuff that you can just take at face value. There's less sort of going on behind the scenes now. We're really it's I mean again, it's partially because we're in the end game of how things are going, right? It's just Cersei versus Daenerys at this point. So it's kind of an unfortunate reality, I guess.
No,
I don't know.
I understand that. I guess I want to say though that's a little bit of an excuse, right? Like I don't think it's I think it's definitely plausible if it was me writing the story.
Hmm.
I would definitely give the same reasoning, right? And I just feel that there should be a reason for Varys to be Varys, right?
Yeah.
There should be a reason for him to bring up who he is. And we always say I don't have to think back on season 8 now, right? And be like, "Oh yeah." You know what I mean? Like Varys exists. Like he's the master of spies. And when Tyrion told him about it, I'm like, "Oh yeah, Varys is a character."
Yeah, Varys is yeah. He's not just there to regurgitate information or anything. Yeah.
That's just my one reasoning, but I definitely understand your
No, no,
point. It
I
makes
think I
sense.
think you're right too, especially like in comparison to similar characters. Like Tyrion obviously has been at the
You
forefront.
know that he's still smart,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
He made a mistake, but at the end of the day, he's still the same character.
yeah,
So I don't know. That's just generally how I feel about it.
yeah. I mean, this episode actually has been the worst reviewed episode of Game of Thrones so far,
That's interesting.
which is interesting. Yeah, because I mean, I felt as if it was kind of fillery. I didn't think it was horrible though. I just felt like it was almost like we're just we had preparation, 2 episodes of preparation for the night for the Battle of Winterfell with the Night's King, and then now after that we're having an episode that's preparation for the Battle of the King's Landing. Um,
I think this episode probably tanked a lot in ratings, especially it had to do with last episode, 120%, right?
yeah, I would agree. I was actually gonna say I don't know if you remember what I was saying for last episode for Battle of Winterfell, but like I was really hoping they would talk about Arya killing the Night. They
100%.
didn't even, but no, they just blew right past it. They
So I
just
feel like that's where people had a huge problem. They didn't touch upon the fact of how Arya did it, that she did it.
yeah, it's just you did it. You're a hero. Congratulations. I don't. She says I don't really care. It's whatever. You know what I mean? So that's great. I mean, we're never gonna get. There's never there won't be a satisfying end to the whole Night's King thing. So that's fantastic. But yeah, again, I just feel like it was kind of fillery, right? You had a lot of weird stuff, like again with Rhaegal getting shot down basically instantly, right? Which was just almost laughable, right? I almost had to like chuckle at what was happening because it was so poorly set up. Daenerys is flying on these giant, with her on Drogon and with Rhaegal flying around, and she somehow doesn't see the
You got flanked by ships,
yeah,
and you're in the air.
they come out of the crevasse that's conveniently placed there, and it's like, oh, I didn't see them. Lovely quote by writer. I don't remember which D. There's D and D, but I don't remember which one. I don't know if it was David or DB Weiss, but he says she kind of forgot about the Euron's navy. It's like, oh, that's great. So she's an idiot. Fantastic. Okay, I guess we can excuse bad writing for just people forgetting things because they forgot. Whoops. I still don't understand why he would ever say such a thing because it's really a really bad thing to say about your own writing is that you make your
You
characters.
have to just think of it this way, Corey. After such a hard-fought battle against the Night King, where you lost half of your Dothraki, you lost huge people, you lost Jorah, her mines are still on the death, and then after she's flying through the sky, at least she still has her two babies, they're still alive, and then wham, there comes. No, I'm sorry,
Yeah. No,
but
it was again. I don't know why you would ever say that about your own writing, because I mean, you're basically just saying like we couldn't think of an intelligent reason as to why or how we could kill this dragon. So we
Night
so
King.
we just made Daenerys stupid and made her forget, even though they were talking about the Euron Greyjoy's navy and the Iron Fleet just kind of before they left. She just forgot, right?
And here's the best part, right? After she sees Rhaegal get shot down, what does she
She
think?
charges right
Hmm,
forward. Yeah.
that's what I want to do. Why?
I'm gonna charge him, and then for whatever reason, at this straight moving target, Euron's navy apparently can't shoot it down. I don't know.
She has time to fly away,
Time to
and
fly away, and the whole thing was just very poorly set up, and was not again almost kind of laughable. It was almost laughable to me, I would say.
yeah, and then
Um,
they get Missandei, right? I don't know. I think I'm saying her name
yeah, Miss
correctly.
Sunday. Yeah.
Then they get Missandei and they capture her, and then this is the time for like the meeting. I didn't necessarily have a big problem with the earlier bits of the episode, besides armies just not really mattering, right? No, there's no like sort of attrition or like there just seems to always be another
It
man
always
to
it
get
just it
slot in.
there's no kind of consequences. It's
I
like
swear the Unsullied are getting bigger.
yeah, it's like oh we fought the Night's King again against his undead army, but we're okay. We have half our Dothraki, still tons of Northmen and Unsullied. Like we're cool. We're good to go. We don't need to rest, right? Like Daenerys gets upset that Sansa asks if people can rest. Like no, we're good to go.
And you
Like
think that the purpose of like bringing this up, right, of people need to rest, you think it'd maybe be a point later on, right, where people are
nope,
tired, you see
nope.
wounds, but it never
Nah,
is.
it's
Nothing
never
really
nope.
matters.
There's
And
no
that's a big
consequences. It's
problem.
just like, hey, look at the big cool armies fighting, man. Don't think about it. Just turn your brain off. Have some entertainment.
And yeah, so when it comes to the talk between Cersei
The parlay
and
there, yeah.
the parlay,
Yeah.
right, I found it was just horribly done, right? Usually when it comes to parlays and you bring both leaders, right, or you bring their spokesperson,
Yeah.
uh, there's usually like an insurance, right? Like you can make sure there's no war that's going to go down,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But there was really none of that. Like what
hmm
was to stop any of them from attacking, which was definitely a pretty good use of
It was just
your resources if
yeah,
you think
it was
about it,
just
right?
weird. Like on Daenerys' side, you have her and Drogon kind of hanging in the back, where it's like, why would you not have your dragon like circling around or like up at the front?
It's actually chilling on the
He's
ground.
just chilling, yeah, on the ground. Still target, kind of behind all the like the 20 Unsullied that they brought for whatever reason.
20
It's
Unsullied.
like, all right,
That's gonna stop them.
yeah. And then you have the talk between Qyburn and Tyrion even like goes past Qyburn to go kind of appeal to Cersei, and it's like, oh well, she could easily just kind of snipe him with the archers or anything right here, and then, whatever. That's
God
all
bless
good.
Qyburn, by the way.
Yeah,
Great actor.
yeah. Qyburn is suitably creepy, but also not like, he's not an idiot. You know what I mean? He just he knows what he's doing. He sticks to his guns. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's really weird to think of actually because Pirates of the Caribbean did a parlay scene better than Game of Thrones did. I believe it was with the third movie, Davy Jones, and you have Captain Jack Sparrow, Captain Barbossa, Davy Jones, Will Turner, and I believe I can't remember who else. Anyway, but it makes sense because you have three characters kind of on each side in the middle of this random island that's in the sea. It's just the six of them, right? So if anything goes down, well, it's 3 on 3, and then the ships are all there to start firing each other if they need to, right? Not an instance where you have Cersei on her walls with all of her scorpions pointed at Drogon, who's just chilling there, like I said, in the back as a still target, and Tyrion walking up to the gate, doing all this stuff, and it's just
And Tyrion usually was pretty wary of his sister,
he
right?
should, yeah, he should be. I
He
mean,
was in the past. He was like, I know she wants to kill me. At every opportunity she took, she would try to kill Tyrion. Why would she not do
yeah,
it this time? Especially in the near future when you find out that she's gonna go to war with them,
I guess she
right?
forgot. I guess she
Like,
forgot her.
things like this make no sense.
Yeah,
But anyway, the talks happened between Tyrion and her. She
yeah,
was resolute in her decision,
yeah.
and I liked when they kill Missandei. You saw that contrast where Dany probably in the past in season 1 would want to look away from the death,
Yeah,
right? Because she was so young, she's a child.
very impressionable. Yeah, kind of like, yeah, I really like it because, yeah, Dany has been, or at least started off, especially as this kind of really just a political tool, right? Like she's one of the last Targaryens, and she's a woman, obviously, but then you have Viserys, who, as the last male Targaryen, presumably and the older of the siblings, um, he's supposed to be, um,
He was ruthless.
yeah, he's supposed to be,
He was crazy.
yeah, he's supposed to be more of a kind of he has more power, you know what I mean? He's, again, in the way kind of the setting works is that you would go to the man, the eldest, and then obviously he's a man, so he kind of has that going for him. But yeah, he's ruthless, he's insane, he's kind of an idiot, right? He's very arrogant, and that's what gets him killed. But then yeah, Daenerys up until she gets her dragons is basically just like I said, a political tool. She gets married off to Khal Drogo, and that really was going to be her life until he died and she got her dragons, right? And since then, she's gotten appropriately more, more jaded, but also more kind of resolute in how
More
she,
mature.
yeah, more mature. She knows what she's doing for the most part. Obviously has her mistakes and her upsets and stuff, but she's more hardened, right? She doesn't really put up with all the stupid stuff that ends up happening to her. She's not a little girl who just kind of follows
Sits
her.
on the sideline.
Yeah, she's not a little girl following her brother around anymore. She's the queen, right? So pretty good development in that regard, at least in a general sense.
And then you have what's his name,
Grey Worm. Yeah,
and you have Grey Worm looking at it, and it was
yeah.
fantastic.
He looks away. Yeah, well, it's basically the same thing as it's almost the opposite of what Dany kind of happened to Dany, right? Because
with the Unsullied
yeah,
training.
the Unsullied, since children were taught to be hardened and resolute and non-emotional, right? But then because
Cut
of
off your nipples.
yeah, because of Dany, they become people. You know what I mean? Like before, then they weren't even considered as people. They were just the Unsullied, expendable soldiers, whatever. But then now, because of Daenerys and everything that she's done, they actually have emotions. And of course, with Grey Worm, he ends up falling in love with Missandei. So yeah,
He's had great character development this
He has,
season.
yeah.
If there's one person that's had it, it's been him.
Yeah.
He's had struggling to try and kill off his men, right? In the last episode and in this episode, right?
Yeah.
He sees the love of his life die.
yeah,
Right? So,
it's a really good contrast because Daenerys starts as this little girl who's kind of scared and uncertain about everything, but then kind of becomes more hardened. And Grey Worm starts as this hardened, emotional soldier, and then becomes someone who he has things to care about. So he's obviously very uncertain and very anxious about how things will proceed. And like you said, really good moment where you have him looking away, and Daenerys is just she looks, she sees, she's furious, and yeah, that leads us into the next episode.
right, and I just was so confused at that point. I was like, so what's gonna happen? Is Cersei gonna let them walk away? Look at all those weak Unsullied. Yo, just shoot right
Yeah,
now.
you could shoot
Even,
you could shoot the giant dragon because that's really the only threat that was there. And if they just shot all their scorpions at Drogon, then I mean, how are the Unsullied going to breach the gate? They wouldn't. But yeah, Cersei lets them leave, and then we have next episode.
Yeah.
So, I mean, all in all, I kind of like I said, it did feel a bit fillery. Not all bad, but definitely could have done with more good stuff than bad stuff.
I actually liked this episode
Okay.
more than the last because I went through like the five stages of like acceptance, right?
Oh,
like
yeah.
I hated the
5
episode
stages of
so
grief,
much,
yeah.
like grief.
Yeah.
I hated the episode so much. Then I was like trying to like conjure what it could possibly be, and I finally before the episode I just accepted that this is the show now. This
Right.
is what we're going to get. This
Yeah.
is the tone of it. So I wasn't surprised at all. I'm a very casual viewer, and if I can see this, there has to be something wrong.
Yeah. Don't need to be a mechanic to know there's something wrong with your car, Same sort of thing applies here. So, yeah, I mean, we have episode 5 and 6. So, I mean, we'll get into that when the time comes. So, I mean, unless you have anything else to
No, that's
say
it.
for here, I mean, yeah, we definitely appreciate you guys taking the time. Thank you so much for watching, listening, whatever have you. We got
Catch you later.
Yeah, take care.